All right. Hey guys, I think we are live. Thank you for being here and joining me tonight for our second edition of the, I don't know what to call it, PA School interview webinars. I would love to hear if you were here last time. Let me know in the chat. Hopefully that was a helpful session. If you weren't here, no big deal. We'll go over a little bit of how this is going to work, what to expect, and then we'll jump into some tips and some questions. I see Becky. She's like our OG in the chat. You'll see a couple people popping up in the chat with helping out with links and information. So if somebody's in there as the PA platform, there's a fly in here. That is Emily who helps me out. And then you'll also see Michelle in there. So they're going to help answer your questions, point you to whatever you need. And they're also going to help me by taking your questions and things you want covered and putting them in a Google Doc. So if you see me looking over here, I'm looking at my computer, my Google Doc, and this should be fun. It was fun last time, I think. And I see a lot of people who were there at the last one, which is awesome. I would also love to know where you're coming from. Like, how'd you find this? Instagram, the Facebook group, TikTok, email list, just so we can kind of know, where you found the webinar and decided to tune in from. All right, let's get into just a little bit of housekeeping. Replays will be sent out in a few hours. So if you can't watch the whole thing, no big deal. That's okay. You can watch the replay later. And then tomorrow, actually, the first version of this, which was last month's webinar, will be up on YouTube and it will be in the podcast. So you can either listen to it or watch it if you prefer. If you missed out on that one. So last time we talked a little bit more about traditional interviews and group interviews, and we did some examples. And this time we're going to focus more on ethical questions and MMI, which is multiple mini interviews. We'll get into what that means. Also, let me know in the chat if you have interviewed or have an interview invite coming up. See anything else? This is not virtual shadowing, so it doesn't count for shadowing. And anything else? So we do have a deal. So mock interviews, we made a special code. Let me see if I can find that to put it up. For October, which is 10% off mock interviews if you use the code OCT webinar. And I will tell you, our weekend and evening times are booking very quickly. So if you know you're going to want to do a mock interview, go ahead and schedule it. You can always reschedule if you need to, but I would go ahead and make sure you're, getting the best time for you that works. All right. So we've had some people interviewing. Oh, wow. Duke at the end of the month, four interviews, 3 to go. Wow. Congrats. Nice. I know some of you are probably still in that waiting phase, and that's okay. Some schools haven't even started interviewing. These cycles are still kind of messed up from the pandemic. So last year we saw schools interviewing a lot earlier and doing pretty much all virtual. This year it's been a lot of virtual up to this point, and now we're seeing a little bit more of in-person. I think some schools are even, this is just my 2 cents, not from schools, but I think some schools are even waiting a little bit to see what's going to happen and see if they can do in-person interviews. Some schools are doing virtual and in-person. There's a little bit of everything. And so you've got to just be ready, especially with virtual interviews. You never know when they might call you and say, hey, we had somebody drop out for an interview tomorrow. Would you like to interview? Y'all, I get people emailing like, hey, can I do a mock interview at midnight? My interview's tomorrow, or at 5 a.m. before my interview. At that point, it's a little late. So you really have to go ahead and start doing your preparation, thinking about interviews before you get the invite so that you're ready to go. And I'm sure some of y'all have stories like that. I hear them all the time. Okay. I think we are good to go. We are also going to make, like, if you are still in your preparations, we have the PA school interview guide. Let me see if I have one close by. Here's one. So, all right. Yeah. Okay. I saw somebody in the chat ask, is this session only about MMIs? Can we ask questions regarding the application process as well? This webinar is specifically about interviews, and a lot of these interview tips you can apply to any type of interview. So even if we talk about ethical questions, those are probably going to come up in a traditional interview or an MMI. And a lot of the things and techniques we talk about in MMI, you can use in regular interviews. But this isn't really a general admissions webinar. We've had those in the previous month, so you can go back and watch those, and then we'll have some more coming up in the future as well. Thanks, Becky. You're like seriously the MVP. Okay, so let's talk ethical first, which I have to remember which chapter this is. Chapter 6. So if you are wanting to work on your ethical questions, that's where you want to start. But when we talk about ethical questions, what schools are doing is trying to look at your morals and your thought process between deciding between right and wrong. That's the simplest way to put it. It gets more complicated than that when we throw in some scenarios and situations that you have to talk through and think through and explain. But the base of that is just, are you going to be, as a healthcare provider, someone who makes the right decisions and stands up for your patients and helps them, even if it's outside of just medical things? Because there are some ethical issues within medicine. In the chat, tell me some ethical issues that you hope don't come up in your interview, that you would prefer not to have to talk about. Or if you were asked, tell us about an ethical dilemma in the US right now. Or in medicine, what would you kind of put in there? If you're having any issues with the sound or the connection, use the little refresh button at the top, and it should bring you right back to the session. And then the replay should be fine. Okay, so and then we're going to do a couple ethical ones, and then we're going to get into talking about MMI. But remember, there's a lot of crossover with this. Let's see. All right. So, and if you do raise your hand, make sure that you are able to come on the stage, not somewhere noisy, or, try to be kind of ready for that. All right. I'm seeing a couple of people here. Let me grab my pen to take notes during our question. Okay. Sorry, my lip is itching. New lip gloss. Okay. We have, I think, Sarah. I'm going to try to bring you up. Let's see what happens. And if it looks like we're having technical difficulties, we'll kind of move on pretty quickly, but you can raise your hand again and we'll try again if it doesn't work. When you do come up to the stage, you'll have to turn on your microphone and your camera. So one of these, I see some things about COVID, like could you be asked questions about COVID? You can really be asked questions about anything. And some programs will even try to kind of put you on the spot, not expecting you to have the perfect answer or even an answer at all. They just want to kind of see how you respond in a tough situation. And so in those situations, it's okay to say that you maybe don't know everything about that topic, or that's something you need to research more or learn more about. And your honesty goes further than digging a hole that you can't get yourself out of. All right, that Sarah, I don't think is working. Let's try. Okay, Sarah's in there twice. I don't know if it's two different Sarahs, but we'll try the second one and see what happens. Okay. I have my question ready. I'm gonna write it down so I say it right. Also, if you follow me on Instagram, I talked about it, but I had my hair, a treatment done where I can't wash my hair for 3 days. So if it looks so, hopefully this time will too. How would you feel about treating a patient with COVID? probably all have. All right, it looks like it may have worked. Let's see what happens. It should be either at the top or in the corner. Okay, cool.
Can you see me?
Yes, we can.
All right. Sorry, I'm with my pajamas. I just came back from work. So.
It's okay. I am too. I just have a sweatshirt on, so
Yeah.
you're good. Thank you for being our first volunteer/victim. Okay. Have you interviewed anywhere?
No, actually, I mean, I said it. I've got 2 rejections, and I'm still waiting for 4 more replies. So pray for me.
Yes. You have a lot of people on your side, and
hopefully, yeah. Thank you.
Backing you up now.
I'm also like reading your interview guide, and it's really, really helping. So I'm praying. So
well, you're ready. So you'll be ready when they call. So that's
yeah, hopefully.
All right. Well, let's try some ethical questions and see how it goes. Okay.
All right. Don't judge me though.
Oh yeah, no. All right. They're gonna hype you up. It's good. Okay. So tell me about. I'm gonna be taking notes. Tell me about a time you broke the rules.
One time when I was working as a nurse aide in the ICU, there's this rule in the hospital that I'm working in, where nurse aides can't do anything. It's critical when it comes down. So what I did is I hurried up, and I got a mask and I started CPR immediately. Otherwise, I don't know what could have happened. So I remember that time when I was scared that I'm gonna be punished or reported, but the nurses were glad that I actually did that, because other than that, the patient might have been dead.
Final answer?
Also, I remember. Oh God, I got stuck on this. Sorry.
It's okay. You're doing good.
I can't get anything on the top of my head right now, but I've seen other nurses how they break the rule, and they try sometimes to go around the rule just to save a patient, and I really appreciate when they do that, because sometimes the rules sometimes it could be critical, and it could be life-threatening in a way.
Yeah. Okay, how'd she do, guys? Let us know. Everyone's so encouraging and supportive. I love it. Okay, let's break down your answer, but I think overall you did a really good job, especially with being nervous and being the first one, and you'll never have to do this in front of 200 people again. So you're doing good. Okay. Yeah. So, so good initial answer, broke the rules to save a patient. So, one thing, let's just talk for a second, which clearly, this is not a real thing. And, like we said, really set it up well. They don't tell me what their role was. They don't tell me what the setting was or what was going on. Mm-hmm. And in this type of question, when I said, tell me about a time you broke the rules, some people would also jump into a little bit more of what you got into at the second part, it's okay to break the rules if you're saving a patient, or, you never need to break the rules, or in some cases, and that's more of a general response. That would be more of a response to me asking you, is it okay to break the rules? But I asked you for a specific example, and that's what you gave me. So that phrasing, that tell me about, give an example, that's an example of a behavioral or situational type question, which can also be ethical. Mm-hmm. Okay. So you told me your role, nurse aide in the ICU. That was awesome. That already makes me go, oh, you have good experience. That's quality, especially in the times that we're living in. So that is awesome. And then you very clearly also told me the rule. And so that is important to lay out. Like, I want to be able to tell from your answer that you answered it. So you said, okay, you know, nurse aides cannot do anything critical. Got it. And then you told me the situation. So nurses were busy. A patient's O2 was going down. It was a COVID patient. I knew that was a bad situation. Explaining more about the nurses doing that, you can a little bit. One thing with this type of question, if you want to take it that kind of next step or that full circle, is you explained what happened, but going into a little bit more of why and your mindset, and what you were thinking in that moment. And we'll talk about this again. I'll bring it back up when we do MMI. But if you can explain, in my mind, I was thinking, if I don't help, this patient could die. If I do help, I could get in trouble. And to me, the benefit was helping the patient versus what consequence I would have. So, although I broke the rules in that situation, I felt it was warranted. And, as a PA, I probably would have made the same decision. But I respect the rules, but I also, patient, in that case, the patient was my first priority. Something like that. But yeah, so I think you did really good overall. One thing I just wanted to point out, I don't know, I haven't been able to really follow the chat to know what everyone else came up with for their, like what you would have come up with for this question, but it doesn't have to be medical. And so that's just for any of these questions. I don't want y'all to get stuck in a rut where you feel like you have to pull from your medical experiences, because you want to show the variety of your experience. You want to also talk about your volunteering and your shadowing. Maybe while you were shadowing your preceptor, example, I thought you did a really great job. And I think the chat did too. So
yeah, but like the thing is, what I noticed is that during my answers, I tend to say a lot of ums and likes. I tried to avoid that, but that is really hard to do. So that's something that I really need practice on. So that was really helpful. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. No, you did great. And it's, and the best way I found to combat that is to just slow down. So take a second, breathe. It's going to feel long to you, but it's not really that long. So just like take a breather, and that tends to help with that. So yeah, but thank you so much for coming to the stage.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Awesome. All right. So I see in the chat, and I think this is interesting. Is it okay to say never? As in, I've never broken the rules. No, it's not. I don't think that's accurate. Have you ever ran a red light or a stoplight? Have you ever done speeding? I don't know what to say to that. Whatever. Missed a curfew, turned something in late, even on accident. Like you should be able to find a time you broke the rules. I also had somebody one time, I asked, tell me about a time you struggled academically, and they said they never had, which isn't accurate. Even if you have all A's, you don't have all 100s, and there has to be a subject that you struggled with. Even if you didn't get a C or an F, you can tell me something that was difficult for you to learn, because we're not trying to trick you. We're not trying to, see if you're a bad person. It's really just, seeing what that means to you and what you come up with. Today, Michelle, who helps me, and I were doing some work this morning, and I said the first thing that comes to my mind, which if you follow me on Instagram, you probably know this, but I really like Taylor Swift. But the first thing that came to my mind was, number one, speeding. Like, sometimes we go faster than we're supposed to go. And that is something I know I'm not supposed to do. It's something I'm aware of. And it's something I have to pay attention to, and you could go that route of talking about, that's something I'm aware of, and I've never got a speeding ticket, but I, want to make sure I'm protecting everyone else and doing what I'm supposed to do, and go into that argument. But the first thing that came to my mind was the last Taylor Swift concert I went to, which was Reputation. I went with my friend Taylor, who's now in PA school. And where we were seated, we were kind of near like another section that was closer up. And the person holding the rope was like, listen, if you want to go to that section, you can. So even though our seats weren't there, she kind of was like, you can go there, but technically it was breaking the rules, sitting somewhere you're not supposed to go. But I jumped at the chance because it was kind of a once in a lifetime chance, and I don't regret it. And so I think in that situation, I made a decision. Maybe I would have gotten kicked out of the concert if I got in trouble or something. But to me, that was a time where the consequence outweighed the risk outweighed the consequence. And so even something like that, it seems silly, but those things show a program that you have personality and interest and hobbies, and you just never know how you'll connect with your interviewer. All right, I'm going to go to our document here real quick and see what questions we have. Okay, let me see. Try to go through these. We'll go back through that. If you go blank on a question, this is a good question. We kind of said it before. Go back and just breathe. Like, you can say, let me take a second to think. I need a second. I haven't thought about that before. Just take a second. If you're really stuck, just, say, can we come back to that question? I would try not to do that for multiple questions, but that's, reasonable to do. I'm going to try to hide these. Is it okay to have a semi-funny story that's not healthcare school related? I think that would kind of be like my Taylor Swift one, which I think would be it. Okay, here's the thing. With any of this, like, you got to read the room. So, like, you got to read your interviewer and kind of the situation and see if you can get a read on how things are going to be taken. I interviewed at one school where I had 2 separate one-on-ones, and one was super rigid and intimidating, and the other one was so laid back and so nice. So you have to take that into account a little bit and kind of maybe change your topics and your stories to fit who you're with at the time. School interviews, they might really, anything's fair game. You may get anything in a group interview that you would get in a normal interview too. Okay, there's a couple questions about what if a reason you struggled was due to mental health? What's your advice when an answer involves a personal struggle with mental health? Is there a stigma behind it? This is another kind of like read the room kind of thing. And there's also just from reading personal statements and doing mock interviews, there's times when you are more vague and there's times when you're more specific. And in both of those, your essays and your interviews, you'll probably be a little bit of both of those. And so, but it's a fine line, because if you say I had a medical condition without going into too much detail, you are with medical people. So you're talking to PAs. And so sometimes, you want to give enough background so that they know what's going on. Because when I read those things, I tend to assume the worst. Like maybe that's just the way my brain works, but I assume things are really bad. Same thing with if people just allude to like an academic struggle, I assume it was really, really bad. And then a lot of times I'll see their application, their transcripts, and it was like 1C, but they made it into seem like this big thing in their essay by just not stating what it was. So in those situations, you just want to state things very directly. And the biggest thing is, if you bring up a personal struggle, is showing how you've grown from it and how it won't be something that you feel like will impede or affect your ability to practice as a PA or complete PA school. Those things can also help you empathize with patients and relate to them better and help your classmates to understand things better. So it's not something you have to completely shy away from, but you also don't like, I've had people who go into a lot of detail about like family and relationship things that don't necessarily relate to either the question or them becoming a PA. So you want to make sure that everything you're including relates directly to you engage or acknowledge the other interviewee's response. I think it is. I think it part of the reason schools do that is to see how you interact with other people, because PA school is such a team-based effort. And so if you're completely ignoring them and they're there, that's going to be a little weird. I was actually in a group interview where somebody did that. So, I think you can build off of their answers. You can just, very casually refer to them, use their name. And I think that's adequate for those situations. Okay, we're at the 8:30 mark, and I want to make sure we don't run out of time. We'll come back and do more ethical questions, but we'll also talk more about ethical questions with MMI. Make sure I haven't missed anything. Okay. So with MMI, has anyone been in an MMI situation? Let me know if you have. I'm going to explain a little bit about what this is first, and then I'm going to talk about some strategy. We'll put a blog post in the chat about MMI strategy, which is basically what I'm going to talk about. So that'll help you. And I think there's a specific YouTube video on that also. So multiple mini interviews are a technique that med schools have been using for a long time, and PA schools have more recently started to adopt, or more schools have. Some have been doing it forever. But this, I'm interested now that a lot of y'all have had MMI. So tell me when I talk about it, if you had a traditional one or if you didn't have a traditional one. So a traditional MMI looks like basically stations. So you have 5 to 10 stations, and they typically are 5 to 7 minutes long. So you go between, every interviewee goes for kind of the basics of it. A traditional MMI is blinded, which means they don't know anything about you. They haven't seen your application. They don't know your grades. They don't know your experience. They've got nothing. A traditional MMI, also, your interviewer will not respond to you. It's not going to be conversational. You're not going to be going back and forth. It's going to be just you talking or doing whatever the situation is. The goal of MMIs is to have different stations that identify different characteristics. So they're looking at empathy, confidence, decision-making, critical thinking, all these different things. I have them listed in the book. There's a chapter that, they're trying to evaluate you on these principles that they feel are important for healthcare workers to have, or for you to have as a PA. So it sounds like we have some traditional MMIs in the chat. This is, yeah. So the problem I see with a lot of MMIs is that people struggle with timing. So if you know you're going to have an MMI, you want to make sure that you're practicing your timing. Most people cannot fill 5 minutes of talking. The majority of answers when I'm practicing with people are maybe 30 seconds to 2 minutes. It's very rare that people go over that. And so that's something we work on a lot during mock interviews when we practice for MMI. And that's something you can do too when you video yourself, is make sure that you are, watching your timing and seeing how things go. These questions can be very interesting. So sometimes they're just like off the wall, random questions to kind of see what you do with it. There can be scenarios where you're acting something out, where you are a PA, you are a patient, you're, a tech, something where you're working with a patient. Things like that, physiology, anatomy stuff you may be expected to do. And then there would also be some ethical stuff, especially those situations, scenarios, things you walk in, there's an angry patient, there's a patient you have to help, or just an ethical situation you have to address, which we'll do another one in a second, a little bit more MMI style. Teaching something, so that's what somebody just put, teach a student to tie a shoe without using my hands. Yeah, so that's something when we do MMI practice, a lot of times what I'll say is teach the person how to put gloves on, or teach the person how to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. If we have time, we'll do one of those. We'll see if we have time, because those are kind of fun. And then what else? I mean, it can be anything. And so you really have to be ready for everything in an MMI. You also have to be ready and okay with kind of letting things go. If you do poorly or feel like you do poorly in one station, you've got to pick yourself up, move on to the next one, and be ready to go. And if you feel like you did bad, other people probably do too. So don't worry about it. Just brush it off, go to the next one, and that's it. I don't know what that means. Okay. All right. So let's see if we can bring someone back up to the stage. We're going to ask a question pretending it's MMI. It's still ethical, but we're going to talk through MMI strategy following this question. Okay. Let's see. Okay. Emily's up next. Let's see if it'll bring you to the stage. And say, I need to reference this. Let me see. I want to make sure I do one that's not in here. So MMIs are chapter 7. Oh, that's a good one. Interpreting graphs, that's another one. Or hello.
Hello.
Reading articles, that's another one. Okay, cool. Let me see. I want to make sure. Okay. Awesome. Have you read this? This is ethical. I'm not going to respond to you during it.
Okay.
Not too much pressure. And then afterwards we'll talk about it. Okay. So hold on, my pen stopped working. So let's pretend that, and you would, in a real MMI, you would probably like read this prompt before you go in the room, and you'd probably have a couple minutes to prepare. So you would, you know, a lot of times they'll give you some time to think about it. You can kind of organize your thoughts before you get in. Okay. So let's pretend you're in PA school. So in PA school, you find out that one of your classmates has become romantically involved and is dating their preceptor from a rotation. And so you discover this. What is your response, and what do you do in that situation?
I think I would go to the person first. I don't know what depending on the school's rules and regulations. If it started during the preceptorship, it may not be an issue. Some people work together and they become romantically involved. I think it would also depend on what the school's rules on it are, because maybe the school has no issue with it, and maybe the school is like, no, this isn't allowed at all. So I think I would also talk to someone in the school board with like a hypothetical, like hypothetically, if I found this out, like, would it affect the student? Would the school have something to say about it? Or is it something that the school just kind of doesn't address?
Final answer?
That's it.
Okay. Well, if we were in a real MMI, we'd sit here for 4 more minutes looking at each other.
Okay, that's awkward.
Mm-hmm. I would love to hear people about that situation, but I've heard it happens. All right. So, okay. Thank you for answering. You did some really good things that we're going to talk through.
Okay.
And this is all in the blog post. The main thing you want to keep in mind is thinking out loud. And you did a good job of that with kind of going down these different paths. You want to show me what is happening in your brain, because I don't know that. And that's what a lot of people come out and just say, you know, I wouldn't do anything, or I would go to the person and tell them that wasn't right, or I'd go to my teacher. And that's awesome. Like, we're not trying to kind of figure out, we're not asking you to be the final decision here. Okay. And some of these questions will not have a right answer. I saw some earlier where, you have one kidney to give to somebody, and these are the two people. How do you decide between them? Or I'm sure schools are throwing out the whole ventilator. There's one more ventilator in the hospital for a COVID patient. Who do you choose? There's no right answer there, and you're not playing God. Like, there would be a lot of things involved in those decisions. It's not just they're going to come to you and ask you that. So it's more figuring out your thought process. So when you're organizing your thoughts, one thing, I understand those logistics, and that's okay. You just need to clarify that a little bit if that's the case. But being able to say, okay, from what I understand, I'm a PA student. I have completed my didactic year. I'm in my clinical year. I have classmates in the program, and I discover that one of them is dating or romantically involved with one of their preceptors from their rotation, and that's all the information I have. Got it. So this is where I think it's helpful to, like, in my mind, I should draw this out. Like, it makes sense where you kind of go down different paths and you tell me what those are. So being able to say, my options right now are to do nothing, to go to the student, to talk about it with my classmates, or to just go to a teacher or admissions or staff and talk to them, or to figure out if this is a problem with the school. Okay, so those are my options. Now I'm going to talk about, and you don't have to say this, but I'm going to then go into the pros and cons of each option. So I'm going to go, okay, if I do nothing, to me, ethically, that's not the right option, because when I think about it, this could be an ethically immoral situation or a problematic situation, because what if that student is getting preferential treatment? They're getting to do things other students aren't getting to do. They're getting graded on a scale that may have favoritism because of their relationship. They maybe aren't focused on patient care and learning because of this, relationship. And so they're not going into it with a student mindset and really there to learn. And so that could become a problem later on when they're taking care of patients. You're going to feel kind of like you're rambling, but really you're just laying your thoughts out. So that's why this is a problem. Okay. So to me, I could not say nothing because I feel like it is something that needs to be addressed. I could talk to my classmates about it, but that would be gossiping. I don't think that would get me anywhere. And I think I would prefer to go straight to the person, even though that would be uncomfortable. And it's okay to say that. Same thing with like cheating. You can say, I wouldn't want to be the person to have to tattletale or go to some. And I like the questions you said, how long has this been going on? Like, what's happening? This is what I heard. Is it true? Find out from them, get some details. And then this is where you've got to go back into your thought process of, okay, I've got to break down, is this ethically wrong to me, and be able to tell them, I don't know if this is appropriate. I think we need to look at the school rules. Even then, I think you probably need to disclose it to the teachers or the director, and I'm happy to go do that with you. But if you don't want to do that, I do think I'll have to tell them. Just I don't, again, I know about this now and I'm involved and I don't really want to be, but I've got to do something. And that's what schools want to know, especially when it comes down to things like cheating. Like, they just want to know that you're going to do something. This comes down to translating to patient care, and you can say that. You can say, once I'm in patient care, if I see something that is not appropriate in a medical setting, such as someone takes medication or talks bad about a patient or a coworker I will be the person to step up and make sure that I am being appropriate in those situations and taking action, even if I don't want to. But does that make sense? I feel like I'm rambling, but
No, that makes sense.
It's you have to think and talk through how you think. And so I think practicing that is important. And then that goes, I'm going to look at the questions in a second, but that also goes for when we're talking about like instructing someone to do something and all of that. So hopefully that helped you. It was not too overwhelming, but thank you for
make it longer, because I didn't want to ramble about nothingness for 4 minutes. So it makes sense to like talk out your thought process, so you're expanding what you're saying and you're able to get more in with that in 4 minutes instead of just twiddling your thumbs.
Yeah, and just you're helping the interviewer to understand how you think and understand your thought process in those situations is the goal there. So yes, well, thank you for volunteering.
Thank you.
Okay, cool. Let's see. I don't know if anyone's still here. Sorry if the internet's being weird. Definitely refresh if needed. Let's see, am I missing something? Okay, cool. Okay, I think I've answered most of this. All right, I think we have time to bring one more person to this. Joanna, are you coming? Maybe not, maybe not. Okay. Next we have Ashley. Hello. I can't tell if people are still here or not. Like it literally just like puts your names up in a list. All right. Let's go with Sophia. I feel like everyone's going to show up on the stage at the same time. Make sure I haven't missed any questions here. One question here is, would you ask whether it's a blind interview or not? Oh, it worked. I probably wouldn't. You may be able to tell just based on the questions they ask, or they may disclose it. If they say they do MMI, I would assume it's blind, but you just never know. And in general, you kind of want to assume your interviewer doesn't know anything about you because it's very unlikely that they've reviewed your whole application. So, hi, Sophia. How are you?
Hi, I'm wonderful. How are you?
Doing good. How is your interview season going? Any interviews yet?
Yeah, it's actually going really well. So I am actually a sophomore this year, but I have an opportunity to apply early to a program. And so I'm going to be going through that process, and I'm really excited just to see what happens.
Cool. So are you applying now or next year? Or?
So I'm applying early decision to one program this year, and then I'll be applying at the end of my junior year to the rest of my programs.
Cool. So is it like a 3+2?
Yeah, something like that. It's just through my school and then like our combined program.
Oh, perfect. That's awesome. Okay, cool. All right. Well, we are going to do one of my favorite types of MMI, which is giving directions. Because these are very interesting to me just to hear people's responses. We may actually do 2 questions, but we'll see.
Okay.
All right. So pretend there's somebody else here. There's not, but tell this person how to make a ham sandwich.
A ham sandwich. All right. So the most important part about a ham sandwich is that we have all of the ingredients first, of course. So you're going to collect your 2 pieces of bread, probably, and then as many slices of ham as you want. And if you want anything else on there, lots of people put on like cheese or mayo or mustard. So gather your ingredients, and then you'll probably want something to put it on. So like some kind of plate in front of you. You'll put one piece of bread on the bottom, and then you're going to put your ham on top of the bread, the cheese on top of the ham, and then whatever like condiments you want or lettuce, anything else. And then you'll put a piece of bread on top. And that is my final answer.
Okay. For your next question, if you could be any type of tree, what kind of tree would you be and why?
I think I would probably be a cherry tree because I remember looking at cherry trees when I was a kid and I thought they were so cool because you could get like both fruit from them, but you could also just get joy from like seeing the flowers when they bloom in the spring. And they're just like so pretty. And in the snow, they also have like this really, really cool pattern when the snow like lands on the leaves. So I think I would be a cherry tree just because you can both like provide fruit for people, but you can also just kind of provide like joy in the winter season when it's kind of like dreary outside.
Interview, like sometimes your interviewer will just ask you these, and honestly, if I'm in an MMI and somebody, I don't know why my camera's not focusing, and someone's not doing, or they're doing really well, I'll like start asking them crazy questions just to kind of throw them off. So let's talk about the instruction one first. And the best way, I think, to start thinking about these and practicing these, especially if you know you have an MMI coming up, is to just think about everything you do and think about it very specifically. So I think you did a good job like listing out the ingredients, but you may even want to be a little bit more specific. And if you are in a real MMI, they may have a student doing this, and that student is going to act like they've never made a sandwich in their life. And so when you say, you know, what'd you say? Put one piece of bread on the bottom, like they may do something weird, like try to stand it up, or like, you know, they're going to act weird about it. And so you want to be just so incredibly specific. Like, you know, you would open the refrigerator and take out, like I get really specific, like take out the ham with your left hand and set it on the counter. You would hold both sides of the ham container and take the lid off. You would grab 2 slices with your right hand and place them on the top of the plate. Like so specific. And then, you know, you would hold the mayo jar in your left hand and turn the lid to the right with your right hand. Like it sounds so silly, but we're just trying to make sure that you're specific and good at giving directions in those kind of weird situations. So things like think about brushing your teeth. I think that's a good one to practice. Making food, things that you're doing very specifically. Okay. And then, but overall, good job. Like that's just a weird one I like to ask because they'll ask you to think, like I've heard they'll give you like a box of blocks or something and have you create a bridge or make something, or they'll have the person sitting there with an easel and tell them how to draw a tree without saying the word tree. And that's a good one too. I think those are kind of fun. So that's something you could even practice that might be fun with family or friends too. All right. And then these questions of like, what would you be and why? I think those are partly to throw you off, but also partly to get to know you and learn something about you. So you did a good job picking a tree, which is important. Sometimes people will be like, I'd be this one, or I'd be this one, or I'd be this one. So just pick one and go with it. I like that you told a personal story. Like, I remember this from when I was a kid. I think that kind of gives it that, feel good kind of aspect of it's something important, or how that is part of you. So, this tree is fruitful. how do you provide fruit? What do you provide to your community or your family or friends that makes you similar to that cherry tree? And then we're talking about joy, and that's such a great thing. I have a positive personality. I try to be really optimistic. That's something I try to bring to my friends and my classmates, and I want to continue in PA school and as a PA bringing to my patients and coworkers. And kind of pointing those out, even talking about, it has this specific pattern in the snow. We all go through different seasons. I've had seasons where I've struggled and seasons where I'm, happy or sad. And I try to, maintain and really continue to stay true to who I am. Some of those are going to feel like a stretch sometimes, but it really is just you taking creative liberty to use that situation to tell them about you. So I think you did a great job, especially with those weird ones. Thank you for volunteering, and good luck at your upcoming interviews, hopefully.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Okay, so somebody said, it's saying something like a palm tree cliche. Not at all. So if you can, make points from a palm tree, whatever tree comes to mind. Sometimes you're like, I can't think of any trees. You kind of got to go with it, make it work for the situation. All right, guys, we are right at our hour here. Sorry if the internet was a little glitchy. The replay will not be. And as I said, the first part will be up on YouTube for the end of the year. Thanks, guys.